Hi, Wasteland TV. We are here with
Paul Niemeyer. How are you? I'm one of Paul Niemeyer. I'm the Mortal Kombat artist, along with a lot of other games too. But probably best known for Mortal Kombat, and it's the 30th anniversary, so we're gonna celebrating that right now. How are you doing, Wasteland TV? Good to see you today.
So, how did you get involved in Mortal Kombat?
I lost a bet. No. No, actually, Greg Ferris, who was my boss at Bally in '82 to '84.
Valiant Comics?
I'm sorry.
Valiant Comics?
No, at Bally Midway.
Valley Midway, okay.
Yeah, Bally Midway, yeah.
I thought I heard you say Valiant Comics.
Oh, no, Bally Midway. Bally Midway. From 1982 to '84, I was an actual employee there, and Greg Ferris was my boss. Well, it turned out that he was one of the creative directors on Mortal Kombat, and when they decided that they had to get it out the door faster than they probably had planned to originally, they decided to use a freelancer, and I was that freelancer. So that's how I got brought into the project.
So did you do the box art for the stand-ups?
Yeah, I did all the artwork on the original cabinet, and I illustrated the logo. That was actually the very first thing I did, the very first meeting I had with them.
That up there?
Yeah.
That logo?
Very first meeting I had with them, they gave me this for reference, and the game was called Dragon Attack originally, and it was changed to Mortal Kombat that day, the day I had that meeting. And you see, I wrote, it was after an hour and a half of meeting and writing furiously, because I came into midstream on the project. So I was writing like a crazy man for about 7 or 8 pages. And we got to the end of the meeting, and they said, "Oh, almost forgot. We're going to call the game Mortal Kombat. We're changing the name." And I went, "Okay, maybe you should have led with that." You know? So I wrote, my pen died, and I looked around. There was a green marker on the table, so I wrote Mortal Kombat in a green marker.
So,
with a C.
It's like it's interesting how close to logos are.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, this is the style that they wanted it done in, you know. So,
And this is where you played the controller right here.
Yeah. So you see, this is the level of art that you usually get, to do.
Oh, I know. I was in the Artist Cove at
Sure.
Sega
Okay,
and
there you
Nintendo.
go. Yeah, you understand. You know, so that was pretty standard procedure. But I was coming in the middle of the game, so I kind of had to play catch up a little bit. And then they were saying, we changed the name to Mortal Kombat. And I wrote Mortal Kombat, and then I remember Ed Boon looking over my shoulder and going, "With a K, like you idiot," you know? So I changed it to a K, and that's pretty much how I got involved with Mortal Kombat. So.
Are you surprised how iconic the game has become?
Blown away. You know, none of us ever thought anything was going to happen like that, and least of all that it was, spur an entire empire growing off of.
Yeah, that's where Pac-Man there.
Yeah.
He was a fad for his day, and then kind of faded away.
Right. But in all honesty, in all the games I worked with, there were only 2 that had spin-offs, and that was Mortal Kombat and Pac-Man. You know?
Yeah, and Miss Pac-Man, Baby Pac-Man.
Oh, yeah, and I actually worked on Professor Pac-Man as well.
I never heard of Professor Pac-Man.
Yeah, that's kind of a unicorn, actually, a little bit of an obscure game. In fact, it's just by the fact that it is a unicorn, it's become quite the collector's edition.
So how many of the Mortal Kombat games did you work on?
Just the first one.
Just the first one? Did you do the art on the home systems?
Nope. No. It probably didn't end well. I probably really don't want to go into it too
I understand
much,
that.
But
as an artist, never think. Usually your tenures never end well.
No. It's one of those situations where once they got what they needed out of me, there was the door over there.
Yeah. I know that feeling.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time either. I won't be the last.
No.
Yeah.
That's why you kind of become a jack of all trades and master of none.
How about it?
Because you can jump from place to place.
It is funny. People look at my career and go, "Wow, you're like an artistic butterfly floating from project to project." And you started out a 3D illustrator, and now you went on the computers, and now you're a sculptor. Yeah, you know why? Because I like to eat. That's why. And that's what.
Yeah, I started with computers, and then I went to competitive photography.
Yeah. See, you follow the path that presents itself in front of you, right?
I just didn't, because as an animator and artist for video games, they only had like a 5-year life, it turns out. And then you had to go back to school you had to go back to school and learn 3D, and then and then you start playing with other stuff in college again, and you go, do I really want to go back into this field again and go do something else?
Well, I had a young designer come up this morning and show me his work, and then said, "Is there any advice you could give me to get into the business?" And I was like, "Well, just the general, the same thing. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice."
I've always tell the people, like from the Modesto area, I go, you got to come up with a project that wows them. You just can't go through the basic steps, because you're competing against colleges of quality, and colleges of quality are going to trump you just by their name alone, those students.
And here's the thing too, if you create something that is successful, you created a perfect storm.
Yeah.
It's that way because of a series of events that came together at that particular moment in time and space and perfectly aligned themselves for you to be a success. Because quite honestly, you only learn one thing from success, and that is what those little series of events that brought you to the finish line were.
And the funny part is, you never remember what those series of events are, and you try to
create them.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah, it'll never happen.
No.
I hate to say it, but you learn 1,000 things from mistakes.
Oh yeah. I've told people that you spend the entire study of life is failure.
Yep.
And what you learn from failure is what you use when you, like they said in Batman for Bruce Wayne, what do we do when we fall down? We get back up.
Well, whenever I taught classes, and I'd have young students in the class, maybe teenagers, and I always tell them, make your mistakes now while they don't cost anything. Okay? Make them all now. Learn as much as you possibly can from the mistakes now while they still don't cost anything to make. Because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to learn how to make better mistakes.
Yeah, or hide your mistakes.
Right.
And that's better mistakes sometimes.
How about it?
It's like lightning, because sometimes the mistake is the lightning.
Yes. Yeah. No kidding. How many things have been discovered serendipitously?
Yeah.
You never went out purposely to invent that thing or create that thing, but it just found its way into the lexicon of your existence.
A good example of that is Star Wars.
Perfect.
Because it was a perfect storm of destined to be failure. No one wanted it, both as a studio or a toy.
Right.
And now it's like, all I did is take Disney to kill it.
Well, the reality of Mortal Kombat was that it almost didn't get made. Because, when Jean-Claude Van Damme bailed on the project.
I didn't know he was part of the project.
Oh, yeah, he was going to be Johnny Cage on the side of the game. And he wanted too much money, and they weren't willing to pay anything. They were cheap asses.
But I've heard a lot of stories about Jean-Claude Van Damme, because he's the original Predator.
Yeah, right.
And he was a pain in the ass, so they fired him after 2 days.
Right, exactly. He was very difficult to work with, and in this
he's very difficult in his heyday to work with, because one of his things stipulates in the contract, you have to have an ass shot with him, bare ass.
Right. Yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So it didn't fly, and a management of Williams, Midway, which is funny too, because they were actually Williams, and it was owned by Williams, and yet they kept Midway on the front door for about 5 years until one day they went, why are we doing this again? But that's another story. Anyway, the management had it in their heads that game was only going to be a success with Jean-Claude Van Damme on board, and when he was no longer on board, they had it in their head that it was going to be a huge flop. So they were really weighing the consequences. Finish the game, or just junk it. And the only thing that saved it was that it was past the halfway point when they hired me to come in as a freelancer and just blow it out. Nobody ever asked me, hey, let's see those great sketches. How about that dragon? Listen, nobody ever said that. All they wanted to know was, is it done yet? When will it be done? How soon before it's done? That's all they care about.
I know, yeah, that's basically all they care about.
Yeah, right.
I worked on Tasmania for about 8 months until they changed artists, and first he tells me he wants Chuck Jones's design.
Oh, okay.
Not the cartoon design, the game designer. Then he wants this design from another era. Because it's like, I spent a lot of time in the library studying Warner Brothers art and studying Taz's designs, and he's like, has 5 different designs.
Yeah.
And then after you get one start working and functioning, I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want that. And then they go, well, we're going to put a different artist on it. And then they just went with the Bible.
Right. Right. So many times too.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes very secular, where they started out in point A, and you know, through a series of events, made this big circle, and by the time they, you know, spent a lot of time and money and piss it all away, they end up right back to where they started from.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I could count the projects on one hand that didn't end up like that.
Oh yeah, and the worst part is the producers are telling the artist what to do, and none of them know anything about art or design, but they're demanding that they want to be this way.
Oh, I went through that with a partner and ended the partnership. It totally ended the partnership. You know, when you really don't understand the other person's job, you really just need to stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Just stay in your lane. I don't pretend I'm a producer. Why are you pretending you're an artist?
Because a producer is a politician.
Yeah.
Not a
a good one is.
Yeah. He's a grifter.
Yeah. Right.
Because the funny part is,
you're
there.
To keep
You're there.
happy.
You don't have any other skills other than con people into believing you're selling them a good product.
I think that is a producer. That may be the job description
Yeah.
of a producer.
Well, look at Hollywood. How many bad films are made every year and under the guise of good films?
Yeah. No kidding. It could have been. So many could have been, would have been, should have been.
And the could have been, should have been. It's like, why can't we have lightning in a bottle like in the era of the video store 80s?
How about it? Yeah.
You know, it's because they were willing to risk and they didn't need a budget.
That's a good way to put it. Lightning in a bottle. That's exactly what that was, too.
You know, Jean-Claude Van Damme's career is a good example of lightning in a bottle, because how many crappy films did he make that we enjoy watching today?
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
David Carradine's entire film career is crappy films that are fun to watch.
Right.
You watch his films more than his kung fu.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, Kung Fu was just a huge, I'm glad you brought that, huge influence on the beginnings of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
You know, because as kids, we all grew up with it. I mean, I remember watching Kung Fu in high school and just being fascinated by it. And the same thing with, you know, with all the origins of Mortal Kombat. You know, that's where it all came out of, was you know, those and the old Bruce Lee movies too. You know, all of them. There were great influences on this, and look what came out of it.
Yeah. You know, and then you have the influence later down the road of John Carpenter's, who takes a lot of these influences and creates Big Trouble in China, which was a bomb in its day.
Huge influence. Huge.
Yeah.
Lord Raiden.
Yeah.
Right out of the film. No, absolutely.
You know, it's just amazing how many things are just sheer influences, and they were bombs of the day, and then they just snowball.
How about it? Yeah.
You know, John Carpenter's entire career is movies that were not reviewed carefully or were kind of considered bad, and then people went back and looked at them again. Wow, he is a good filmmaker because he works under budget.
Oh, yeah, he's notoriously under budget in it. You know, and the thing is, too, when you're writing your own soundtrack, and all it has to be is bum, 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 bum. And just do that over and over.
And sometimes
there's your soundtrack right there.
And the funny part is with John Carpenter, you go, do you make your money by producing, directing, and soundtrack because you take a cut on all this stuff, so you wear multiple hats just to make a profit?
Right.
Because you learn from Halloween, where you made no money, you got to wear multiple hats to at least come up with.
You know, he learned right away. You know, streamlining the situation was beneficial to the end of the product.
Yeah.
And I think there too was, you know, if you don't dwell too much on it, I'm a firm believer of doing. That's less thinking, more doing. And especially at this point in my career, I've got 40, 50 years of experience under my belt. I would rather rely on that. I find myself planning less and less and doing more.
Well, doing is more and more because when you learn something every time, you're not stuck in a niche if you're willing to learn, and you never become narcissistic because you understand you can still fail.
Right. And, you know, and that creative process becomes very fluid. And it opens us up to all sorts of other things as well. I really believe that. That's the way to go.
But we're going to have to let you go now because the background noise is getting too
It's
high.
really loud over here. No
Yeah.
shit.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so very much. I truly enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Thank you.